Hello, everyone. My name is Art Sherwood, and welcome to Lunch Bites. And this is a weekly series that our entrepreneurship and innovation programs at Western are providing access to people from around the world, sharing the things that they know about with people in our community, our region, our state, our country, and the rest of the world. And I have the good fortune of being the presenter today. So we are bringing this to you from the entrepreneurship and innovation programs at Western. And our programs focus on supporting a variety of entrepreneurial founders, leaders, and coaches in different contexts. We certainly support our undergraduates, but we also are now moving into the space of supporting graduate students as well as professionals and executives here in Bellingham, here in the state of Washington, the United States, and around the world. And so our different sorts of offerings will be coming your way. Just make sure that you're signed up on our email list and you'll hear all about them. And by the end of this particular broadcast, what I'll do is I'll make sure that I talk about a few of the exciting things that we've got coming up, such as our Coaching for Innovation courses that we're teaching next year, our Lead Like an Entrepreneur courses that we're teaching next year, our Sell Like a Pro, all sorts of different things that help you be an entrepreneurial founder, leader, and coach. And so today's lunch bite is a continuation of some work that we did last week. And last week we were focusing on uncertainty and how it is impacting you. What today we're going to focus on is uncertainty and your team. So we're going to go over some of the things that we discussed last week, but this is a standalone half-hour lunch bite, and at the end we'll have time for some Q&A if folks are up for that. And I'll stick around for 10-15 minutes if that becomes useful. So today what we'll be focusing on is what the heck is going on. We're going to do a little bit of reviewing of what we covered last week, but for those of you that are new this week, it'll be a full covering of it. Why are things turning out this way, and what can you do about it? So let's talk about what we want. And when those of us that do a lot of design work with people and do design thinking and human-centered design, we're trying to work with other people to build empathy, define problems, ideate, generate solutions to problems, prototype solutions, and test those solutions. And this tends to be a collaborative process. We're a super collaborative program, and we teach that sort of collaboration. Additionally, when we're doing creative problem solving, we're trying to really bring out and open up the creative space with people so that we can generate different ideas, focus on the ones that we really want to move forward with, experiment with those, collaborate and play and have a lot of fun, because play and having fun contributes to our creativity. And ultimately, we want to do this in a way that brings out the best in collaboration. And if you were going to do a word cloud of the different types of things we got, here's what we've got. We want approachability, growth, innovation, collaboration. For us, student-centeredness is really important. And for you, it might be whoever your key stakeholders are. Yet, because of the environment that we're in, what are we actually facing? We're experiencing some things that are different. It might look a little bit more like this. We're feeling a lot of things that don't really feel great. They don't feel great to think about. They don't feel great to feel. They don't feel good in our body because there's so much stuff going on, and it's pressing us, and it's creating stressors. And these stressors lead to us feeling helpless. They lead to us having turning our backs on each other because we're disagreeing about different things, and actually even going from passive disagreement to very active disagreement and arguments. And all of this is really making a very difficult environment for us to be collaborative and creative together in order to be able to be successful in our workplaces, be successful in our families, be successful in our communities, because there's so much going on. And so we're going to talk about this stuff and see what we can do, because all of this makes sense. And here's where I ask you to put on your empathy hat, really trying to understand and put yourself in the shoes of some other folks, because uncertainty brings stress to you your teams, and your organizations. Why? It makes sense because we have a lack of information, conflicting information, an overload of information. Things are new or novel to us. We're being surprised by things. And you feel like things are out of control. You're not sure where you can influence things. And this is all compounding with all the other stressors that are already in our lives that come from having families, from having relationships, from having work, etc. So what we want to do is we want to be able to ultimately understand this, build awareness around it, understand it, and make forward progress so we can be successful. And today we're focusing on teams, and teams are a particularly special case because there's more going on when you start to combine people into this arena of stress. You've got different types of stress reactions. You've got your default and secondary ones, which I'll talk about here in a minute, which leads to something called problem A and problem B, which I'll go over in a bit, which will give you a framework for thinking about our diverse stress reactions. And we'll jump into first this idea of how our reactions are showing up. So what's going on here? Our stress reactions and all of our reactions come out as energy. And energy is how we're showing up because energy is a combination of how we're thinking and how we're feeling. And all of us have thoughts and emotions. And so this combines into the energy we're feeling inside of us and the energy that you feel outside of you and how you show up. So here's a general framework. On a normal good day, you might have certain types of energy. You might have an open, building up energy because you're not feeling as much stress. This is very supportive of collaboration and creativity and considering different opportunities. And then you add in a normal stressful day. This leads over to having mixed energy. And a lot of us respond to this mixed energy of coping and adjusting and trying to get along to deal with the stressful situation until maybe the stress passes. Now, in the current situation that we have all sorts of additional stressors and stressors that are coming from uncertainty related to the pandemic, uncertainty related to race relations, uncertainty related to the politics of our country, our world. And there's all sorts of uncertainties that are coming down and piling on top of each other. So you have this uncertain, stressful stuff, plus all your regular other stuff, which ultimately leads to a closed, tearing down energy. And again, this all just makes sense. Most of us have a default reaction of our thoughts and emotions to these different sorts of contexts. In a normal good day, our default reaction tends to be, hey, we've got this. We're inspired. We're feeling some joy. We're working together. We're feeling great. A default reaction to a normal stressful day might be something like, let's make the best of it. You may feel kind of meh about things. You might feel a little bit irked, but yet you can get some determination and you're going to use maybe even some of your anger and frustration to get things done. Yet in uncertain and stressful situations where you have this closed, tearing down energy, we're like, oh, what is happening? When will this end? Why us? You're feeling helpless, perhaps depressed, sadness, some anger. And all of that keeps us closed and tight and try to protect ourselves, which makes total sense, yet does not certainly support our idea of trying to problem solve together in a creative way, collaborating to pursue opportunities and so on. So one of the key points out of this that I want you to take is that we have default reactions, yet our reactions can be something that we actually choose. Our default reaction is something we're not choosing. That's just where we naturally go. Almost everybody defaults to some sense of feeling like a victim or feeling helpless. It might not last for only a second, but you might feel that, then you might get angry. Those are very common reactions to new uncertainties and new stressors. And the skill here is to be able to become aware of it, notice it, and change to an energy that serves you better. Now that's great for an individual, yet with teams, it's even more complex due to these secondary reactions. Because while we may all tend to default to this red area that we have here on the screen, people then have a secondary or even a tertiary reaction, which starts to create a diversity of reactions. And this is where it all gets even more interesting, because people have these secondary and even tertiary and beyond reactions. And of course, on different days, these can vary. So you've got lots of different variables about how people are showing up. Yet what people tend to do is have their tendency of how they show up. And these are different tendencies. And these difference or diversity in tendencies leads to even possibly more stressors. To remind folks how you might show up, at kind of a level 1 sort of energy, you might feel helpless, you might feel a victim, guilt, you might say, why me? You might say, this sucks. In a level 2 sort of energy, you've got anger, blame, shame, judgment. You might be saying, WTF, what's going on here? Getting really upset with things. Again, natural reactions, but different. And you go into a third one. Third level might be coping or rationalization. Let's get through it. We'll make the best of it. Let's just figure it out. We can deal with this for a period of time. There's also a fourth level of reaction. You know what? I'm going to become a helper. I'm going to really serve. Let me support you. And you might even say, I can fix things. And some people will even take this to, I can fix you. They become servants. They try to just really pour themselves into helping other folks. Now, there's all sorts of advantages and disadvantages with all of these, but I'll just describe each of these as we go. We have 2 more that I want to share with you. The 5th level of energy might be showing up in a collaborative or seeing opportunity. You might be saying things like, let's figure this out, or let's figure out what could work. We can choose. Wow, ideas. I'm so glad this happened. I know this seems really bad, but we can find opportunities hidden in this. We're going to make lemonade out of lemons, that sort of approach to things. And finally, 6 is like a oneness and synergy. We're all in this. Let's use our creativity and intuition to be able to navigate successfully through all of these different areas. These are all regular reactions for folks. Everyone can react in these sorts of ways. They can choose these sorts of ways, yet people tend to have their tendencies about how they show up. And this is where it gets interesting for you as a team leader or someone who's trying to work well with a network that you're trying to have collaborate around important areas that you'd like to move forward. So let's talk about this. So what? What's the difference? This is where we get problem A and we get problem B. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these. So problem A. Problem A is something you're trying to address. It could be, problem could be, you could interchange that word for challenge or opportunity or whatever idea or whatever it is that you're trying to move forward. I want to move forward on this thing, and that's great. Now, the second you get another human involved, you all of a sudden have problem B, because that human will bring their diversity to the room. So no longer are you only focused on the problem A, you have this problem B of managing and successfully this diversity of what they're bringing. They're bringing their different judgment, they're bringing their different experience, they're bringing their different skills, they're bringing their different demographics, they're bringing all sorts of this different stuff. This is very normal. This is normal diversity work. We do this all the time. We try to say, how do we successfully navigate difference? Sometimes we talk about this with cultural, from a cultural lens. Sometimes we talk about this from a race lens. Sometimes we talk about this from a gender lens. Sometimes we talk about this from a skills lens, an ability lens, whatever it might be, an experience lens. There's all sorts of different kinds of diversity. The one that we're talking about here is the diverse set of reactions that people have related to all of these different ways of showing up in response to these uncertainty stressors. Now, this is important because we have these default reactions. Almost everybody might default to 1 or 2, but then we have secondary reactions. People catch themselves and they say, okay, that's not really working. And then they choose to move to a different place. Now, this might be a conscious choice. It might be an unconscious choice. It's a pattern that might develop, but they have a secondary reaction. Sometimes they even have a tertiary reaction and beyond. So I might move from helplessness to anger, and I might do this like in 2 minutes. And then I might move on to saying, okay, well, I can cope with this, or actually, you know what, I'm going to see the opportunity in this, and so on. And so this reaction variability is really important because it ends up creating problem Bs in ways that we might not have ever experienced before. Additionally, an individual might show up differently depending on the particular day that they're going through. And so I'm going to give you an example of problem A and problem B. On the left here, you see the face of the unhappy, it looks like the unhappy person. I would call that kind of a level 2 sort of reaction. This is someone who's feeling some anger and frustration, and they then meet this person here on the other side. It's got a big smile on their face, and they've got a light bulb going off. Now, let's assume that this is like a secondary or tertiary reaction, a third reaction that they've had. They've gone through their default reaction, but this is kind of where they're stabilizing in terms of the energy they're showing up with in the team, in collaboration, work, at family, or wherever. So this person with the unhappy face is saying, this change stinks. Whereas the other person is simultaneously saying, look at all the new opportunities. Now, I don't know about you, but like I'm on multiple social media platforms, and this is showing up all the time. When the pandemic first happened, people were saying this stinks, this is terrible, I'm feeling horrible. And so many other people were like, there's so many new opportunities here, let's look at this. And you can just imagine how those people were envisioning themselves. So their two messages collide in the middle, and ultimately what they're saying is, what is wrong with that person? They're both saying this. There's like something wrong with that other person because they're just looking at new opportunities. Can't they see that this change is hard and it looks like we'll never get back to our normal? And the other person is saying, yeah, well, you shouldn't feel bad. You should just see the opportunities. There's lots of shoulding all over each other. They're like, you should feel like this and you should feel like that. And what that creates is tension. And the point for you as a leader is that these folks are focusing on each other, problem B, rather than focusing on the reason you brought them together in the first place, which is problem A. So what wins out? Problem B. Problem B here then eats up all of people's attention. It starts to make you have to manage the relationships because they're having this tension, and you've already got problem Bs all over the place anyway, just from our natural diversity. And now you've got these uncertainty diversity reactions, which are causing a lot of challenges. So what can you do for your team network of collaborators? This becomes the critical thing because you can intervene. You can choose to do something about this. Your team can intervene and choose to do something about this so that you can get back to problem A and respect and understand that other folks are going to react the way they react. Tip number 1, and we've done this here, is become aware and acknowledge this is happening and having an impact. Just knowing that uncertainty is happening, acknowledging that people are having different reactions is happening, really makes a difference because that starts to raise the awareness that, this is what's happening in my life, so people can observe it. And once you can observe it, maybe you can do something about it. So this means the individual reaction, the influence of the diversity of the secondary reactions is coming out and can be seen by the people involved. You can do this with the individuals and teams as a whole. As a leader, you can just bring this up. Hey, this is happening to me. Anybody else feeling this? Tip number 2, and we've also done this here. We can build an understanding and validate that this is perfectly normal. It's perfectly normal to react the way you're reacting. And there's actually no right or wrong for anybody's reaction. Whatever reaction they're having is perfectly normal for them. It's also possible that people can understand and accept that other people are going to react in different ways than them. Rather than telling someone they should be a certain way, they can just say, I see that you're doing this, and that makes total sense. Tip number 3 comes into saying, well, now that we have acknowledged and validated this, we can actually decide to move forward and do something about this and intervene. So we can go from our default reactions as individuals and a team to a chosen reaction. But how do we do this? And so here I'm just going to give you a tool that you could potentially use in managing this, and you can go ahead and scale this. So let me just kind of explain how this works. So imagine your team on a scale of 1 to 10 or 0 to 10. 0 is team hell. Things are just falling apart. You're totally enmeshed in problem B. People are at each other's throats. They're screaming at each other. They're ignoring each other. They're passive aggressive with one another. People are focusing all their energy on what's wrong with the other person or the rest of the team rather than focused on problem A. A 10, amazing. The tasks are being taken care of. The people are being taken care of. both are at a high degree of performance or well-being. It's amazing. All of us have been both in team hell and in amazing task and people-oriented spaces. Now, you could ask your team, where do you think we are on this? And actually, the number doesn't really matter. When I do this with teams and we go through this, I say, what's your number? And the key is, what does that number mean to you? Like you could say, okay, if you give it a 4, like it is here on the chart, well, what's a 4 mean to you? And we could explain that. And that starts the conversation. This brings out awareness. This brings out validation. And people can say, okay, now I'm understanding where you're coming from. And the number is just something, usually what I find is that people actually get pretty much in the same zone. What's a 4 mean? It doesn't matter. It's how you're interpreting it. Now, this brings into tip number 4, and I'm gonna come back to that scaling thing here in a minute, is where you can clarify and appreciate what's going well with the team and where things are within their control. When you're feeling uncertain, when you're feeling helpless, when you're feeling out of control, you can first remind yourself, what do we actually have some control over? And let's remind ourselves what's actually going well, which leads us to the appreciation zone. So if we're a 4, the question here comes up, well, why aren't we a 0? And in fact, you can ask that as a team leader. Okay, well, what's a 4 mean? We've done that. Now we can say, why aren't we a 0? Well, we're not a 0 because of this. We're not a 0 because of this. We're not a 0 because of that. Then you appreciate and celebrate the foundation that you have. And that then leads to the ability to, again, acknowledge, accept where people are in all of this uncertainty and their reactions. And you can start getting people toward moving to a place of appreciation, a place of stability, because that provides the foundation. Now, this leads to the next tip, 5A, reflect on and align and refresh your team intentions for the future. Now, I have intentions specifically asterisked and highlighted because I'm not saying goals. You can review your different goals, but goals are a tool to bring your intentions about. What I'm saying is a higher level thing of what is it that we're trying to do together. Now, if people, you can see in this graphic that different people have different ideas of what their goals might be or whatever. Let's get it up to intentions. We're trying to do what together, and let's get realigned on that. Let's get realigned on our purpose. And that leads us to the opportunity zone. If we can say, what is it that we're trying to achieve? How is it that we want to be as a team? That's the tasks and the people. Opportunity zone is where we have possibility for growth. So that leads me to attending to your team energy through choice. You can choose to take care and give yourselves grace. So it's not just about problem A being a task. Problem A can also be about how do we want to be together? How do we want to show up together? You remember those 6 different levels that I mentioned? We can choose one of those and we can try to show up in that space, and we can certainly have grace with one another when we aren't able to show up in that space. And that's the opportunity zone for both tasks and people. Leading us to some of the last pieces. Here's a bonus. The Serenity mantra for the team. I'll give you this, then we'll do a review, and then I'll see if there's any questions from folks, and we'll wrap up. So the bonus Serenity mantra for the team, this comes out of lots of different traditions. You might, whatever your particular tradition comes from, oh, we've got something like this. And this is actually comes out of, this is kind of a riff off of a prayer that was built out in the 1940s. Grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Imagine the power of your team being aligned around understanding what are things that are outside our control. There's almost everything is outside our control, but there are some things that are in our control that we can change. And that might take courage to make those changes happen, which includes sometimes bringing more things under our control, expanding our circle of influence to be able to bring more things under control so that we can change things for the better. And then the wisdom to know the difference so that we don't waste our time and energy on trying to change things that we can't change and being too fearful to change the things we can. So here's a review. Obviously, this was just a bite. This is a bite-sized piece of information. And what I would invite folks to do is to just kind of review this with me. And if you have any questions, we'll go through those. Otherwise, we'll wrap up the conversation with a few more reminders about things that we've got coming up that you can participate in. Tip number one, acknowledge something is different. These times are different. We're at a massive crossroads for humanity. We're at a massive crossroads for whatever country you're in. We're at a massive crossroads for whatever organization you're in. And something is different. And that brings uncertainty and it brings stress. And it's perfectly normal. It's validate these normal reactions. We can do this for ourselves. We can do this for each other. We can decide to choose our reactions. Rather than going to blame and shame and guilt, we can say, is that serving us? If showing up like that is not serving us, how might we show up so that it does serve us? How might we show up so that we feel better? How might we show up so that we can get more done and be more collaborative? Tip number 4, clarify and appreciate what's going well in your current circle of influence, reminding yourself about that opportunity zone. And that, tip 4, this should be tip 5, reflect on, align, and refresh your intentions for the future. And then tip 5B, attend to your energy through choice. And with that, I will, and then we have the bonus Serenity mantra. Stay tuned for more Thursday lunch bites. We're happy to bring these to you. We'll be having more folks from our community and from around the world do these. And thank you so much for tuning in. I'll stay on for just a few minutes in case anyone has some questions. And if not, again, I invite you to check out our events page on our Entrepreneurship and Innovation website. We've got really cool programs coming up for undergraduates, graduates, the community, professionals in all different contexts. And we're really excited to be sharing what we've learned about entrepreneurship and innovation as it applies to people who are trying to make change in the world. We'd love to help be your partner in supporting that.